Alexander Reed had once believed that love, when true, never faded. He believed that if two people chose each other every single day, then nothing, not time, not pressure, not ambition, could erode what they built. But reality proved softer, quieter, and more painful than that. His home was large, too large, filled with art, glass, marble floors, and silence. The kind of silence that didn't allow you to rest. It followed him through hallways, echoed against high ceilings, settled into his chest at night when he tried to fall asleep beside a woman who felt miles away. Elena Reed was elegance personified. A woman who could enter a room and shift its air. She was brilliant, successful, respected. The world admired her. But admiration is not the same as love. And presence is not the same as closeness. T wasn't always like this. There were days, warm, golden days, when they shared dinner on the balcony, talked about future children, laughed about stupid things, danced in the kitchen when music wasn't even playing. They had been a team once. But somewhere along the way, the world demanded too much of her. Charity boards, international conferences, partnerships, speeches. Her calendar became something he needed permission to fit into. Conversations turned into brief updates. I'll be home late. Don't wait up. Just one more event. She was always tired. Always somewhere else. Always holding something heavy that she never explained. Alexander tried. He invited her to dinner. She canceled. He suggested a vacation. She said it wasn't possible. He bought her flowers. They dried untouched in the vase. He tried to talk, truly talk, but every attempt slid off her like rain off stone. Are we okay? He asked once, voice low, careful. Elena didn't even look up from her laptop. We're fine, Alex. I'm just busy. You know how it is. But he didn't know. Not anymore. He began waking up before her and going to sleep after her, just to avoid feeling the distance. At work, he buried himself in projects, meetings, silence, anything to escape the feeling of being unseen by the person who once knew him best. The nights were the worst. He would lie in bed beside her and feel lonelier than he ever had when he was single. The kind of loneliness that hurts differently, like being erased slowly, bit by bit, by the very person he swore to spend his life with. And the saddest part? He didn't even know when it started. When the laughter stopped. When the warmth faded. When love became routine. When partnership became scheduling. He just knew that somewhere in the last few years, the woman he loved had drifted into a world he no longer had access to. A world behind polished doors, polite smiles, careful distance, and secrets he did not yet know existed. And that was when the loneliness began to change him. Quietly. Slowly. Completely. Understood. Maya is gentle, quiet, and emotionally soft, not flirtatious or bold. This will feel slow, tender, and believable. Their 7th anniversary arrived on a rainy Thursday evening. Alexander had spent weeks preparing something simple, not extravagant, not loud, just meaningful. He reserved a small rooftop restaurant where they once laughed over cheap pasta and argued playfully about constellations. The place where their love had felt young and uncomplicated. He arrived early, dressed in a crisp dark suit, a single white rose, her favorite, resting on the table. Soft music drifted through warm lights as the city glowed beneath them. He kept glancing at the elevator. Doors waiting. Elena had promised she would come. Of course I'll be there, she had said. I wouldn't miss it. But as minutes turned into hours, the candles burned lower and the rain began tapping gently against the glass canopy. Other couples laughed, toasted, leaned close to one another, but Alexander sat in silence, staring at the empty seat across from him, called her, no answer, texted her, no reply. Eventually, the waiter walked by with quiet sympathy. Would you like to wait a little longer, sir? Alexander smiled, the tired, polite smile of someone pretending nothing. Hurts. Yes. Just a little more. But even hope has limits. T wasn't until he was gathering his coat to leave that he heard a soft voice behind him. Mr. Reed? He turned. Maya stood near the entrance, not dressed up, rain lightly darkening the shoulders of her sweater. She looked hesitant, almost apologetic for interrupting. I saw your reservation on the schedule. You were still here. I thought maybe you shouldn't have to leave alone." Her voice was quiet, careful. Not intrusive, just kind. Alexander didn't speak at first. His jaw was tight, eyes distant, the kind of expression that someone wears when they're desperately trying not to break. Maya didn't sit immediately. She waited for permission, nodded once. She took the seat across from him, the one where Elena should have been, but there was no romantic tension, no forbidden spark. Just silence. And understanding. Sometimes a person doesn't need words. Just company. After a while, Maya spoke, barely above a whisper. "She must be very busy." Alexander let out a hollow breath, half laugh, half heartbreak. "She always is." The rain outside fell harder, blurring the city into soft shapes and muted lights. For the first time in a long time, someone was simply there. For him, no expectations, no demands, no excuses. Maya didn't ask questions. She didn't pry. She just sat in shared quiet, the kind that feels like safety. That night, Alexander didn't fall in love, but something inside him cracked. When Elena finally returned home near midnight, she walked in like nothing had happened. "Oh, Alex, tonight was chaos. The negotiations ran long. You know how investors can be. I'll make it up to you." He stared at her, his voice low and calm, but trembling underneath. "You promised." Elena sighed, not guilty, not moved, just impatient. "Please don't start this. You know my work is demanding. This is our life. This is what we built." "No," Alexander said quietly. "This is what you chose. And I've been choosing you alone." She closed her laptop with a sharp snap. "Alexander, you're overreacting. You're a grown man. Stop being emotional. Business comes first, always has." The words landed like stones. Business comes first. Not love. Not marriage. Not him. For the first time in years, Alexander finally heard her clearly. And something inside him let go. The divorce wasn't dramatic. There were no public fights, no shouting matches, no courtroom storms. Just documents signed in silence. Just two people who once promised forever, now strangers sitting across a long wooden table. Elena didn't cry. She didn't ask him to stay. She simply said, "If this is what you want." But it wasn't what he wanted. Tea was what he needed to survive, and the quiet months that followed, Alexander didn't chase love. He didn't run to Maya. He simply learned how to breathe again. Maya was careful, extremely careful. She did not try to replace Elena. She didn't try to heal him. She just existed nearby, gentle, patient, steady. When he spoke, she listened. When he was silent, she didn't fill the air. Their connection didn't begin with romance. Tea began with safety. And slowly, very slowly, something warm grew in the spaces where loneliness had once lived. Alexander hadn't chosen Maya because she was younger or softer. He chose her because she saw him, the man behind the money, the reputation, the armor. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had come home. Life didn't change overnight. Alexander didn't wake up one morning and suddenly feel light again. Healing isn't like that. It comes in pieces, small, almost invisible pieces, moments that feel ordinary until they become meaningful. Maya never tried to take Elena's place. She never asked how the divorce happened. She never pried into memories that still stung. She simply stayed. She would leave him small notes on his desk in neat handwriting. "Don't forget to eat. Take a break. You did well today." Not romantic, just human. Some days they sat beside each other in his office after hours, him finishing paperwork, her organizing schedules, both too tired to speak, yet strangely content in the quiet. Their silence was different from the silence he had known in his marriage. This one felt warm, safe. Shared point one evening, she found him staring out the window at the skyline, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. She didn't ask what was wrong. She simply walked over, stood beside him, and said softly, "It's okay to miss someone and still move on." He glanced at her, not surprised by her understanding but humbled by it. That was the night something in his heart finally softened. Weeks passed. Maya became part of his everyday life, not as a replacement, not as a cure, but as a gentle presence who knew how to sit with both joy and sorrow. They started sharing meals, then conversations, then laughter. Small things, her shy smile when he complimented her work, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, the softness in her eyes when she looked at him, like he was someone worth staying for. Their love didn't crash into them, tea bloomed. Slowly, tenderly, like a flower opening one quiet petal at a time. Eventually, he asked her to dinner. Not in a grand restaurant, but in a tiny cafe with warm lights and the smell of fresh bread. Maya almost said no, out of fear, out of respect for what he had lost, but he reached across the table gently and said, "I don't want to fill a void. I want to build something new." And she believed him, so they began. Not as passion overwhelming reason, but as two hearts learning how to feel again. But the world noticed, T always does. Whispers began, "The secretary? He left his wife for her? She must have planned it." Maya heard it all, in elevators, in hallways, online, everywhere. People who didn't know her stabbed her with stories they made up in their own minds. She cried once, quietly, in the bathroom at work, hand over her mouth so no one would hear. Alexander found her there. She didn't explain. She didn't need to. He simply wrapped his arms around her, resting his cheek on her hair, whispering, "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." And she believed him again. Meanwhile, Elena disappeared from the world. No public appearances, no charity events, no media presence, no statements. Even mutual friends didn't know where she was. People assumed she was embarrassed, angry, recovering, rebuilding. But Alexander didn't think of her often. Not out of cruelty, but because emotional numbness is sometimes a shield. Months passed like this. Gentle, warm, almost peaceful. Until one quiet afternoon, an envelope arrived at Alexander's penthouse door. No sender, no message. Just Elena's handwriting. Inside, a single line. "We need to talk." And beneath it, an address, a small private hospital. The kind used when someone wants to stay unseen. The peace Alexander had finally found began to tremble, like glass touched by a whisper. Because deep in his chest, he already knew, something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Not the kind of quiet that brings peace, but the kind that feels like grief waiting in the hallway. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled of antiseptic and endings. Alexander walked down the corridor, the envelope still in his hand, his heartbeat loud in his ears. Room numbers blurred. Memories blurred. His steps felt slow and heavy, like walking through water. Then he saw her, Elena, sitting in a wheelchair by the window. She looked like a ghost of herself. The woman who once commanded crowds, now struggled to lift her head. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. Her hair had thinned to fragile wisps. Her frame had grown impossibly small, as if life had been leaking out of her for months. Alexander's breath caught. His feet stopped moving. His world stopped moving. "Elena," she looked up, eyes tired, dim, but still hers. There was no anger and no resentment, no bitterness. Just a sad, broken softness. "You came," she whispered, voice thin. His throat tightened. "What happened to you?" She smiled, but it was the kind of smile someone wears when the pain is already beyond speaking. 2 years, she said quietly. Stage 3 cancer. It spread faster than they expected. The words hit him like a blow. He felt it, physically, like his chest collapsing inward. You never told me." She looked away, out the window at a world still moving while hers stalled. "I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want you to look at me with pity. I wanted to stay strong for you. For us. For the memory of who I was." His jaw trembled. "So you pushed me away." Her eyes filled, but she refused to let the tears fall. "I thought I could beat it." And when I did, I was going to come back to you. I was going to come home. The silence was a blade. But then she continued, and this time it cut deeper. But I waited too long. And I lost you before I could save myself. Alexander fell to his knees in front of her, hands shaking. A man who had held empires in his grasp but could not hold his own heart. I would have stayed, he choked. You should have told me. I would have carried you. I would have fought with you. I would have, I know, she whispered, voice breaking at the edges. That's why I didn't tell you. That was the cruelty of love. She hid her suffering to protect him, and in doing so she destroyed them both. Elena reached out, her hand trembling, took it gently, carefully, like it might break. Does she make you happy? She asked. He didn't answer. Not because. The answer wasn't yes, but because happiness now felt like a betrayal. Elena nodded anyway, a soft acceptance. Then I'm glad, she whispered. Someone should love you the way I couldn't anymore. His tears fell, silent, unstoppable. I never stopped loving you, he said, voice shaking. She smiled again, weak, fading. I know. And then she broke, her breath hitched, her body shook, the nurses rushed in. Elena, Elena, stay with me, please, her eyes locked on his, wide, terrified, still full of love. Don't let me go, she whispered. I won't, he swore, but her fingers loosened, her chest stilled. And just like that, the woman he loved, the woman he left, the woman who tried to save him by losing herself was gone. No final words, no poetic ending. Just silence, a silence louder than anything he had ever heard. The funeral was small, no cameras, no speeches, no headlines. Just a cold gray morning, a few close colleagues, and a sky that looked like it was trying not to cry. Alexander stood at the front, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. He stared at the coffin, polished, elegant, too heavy with meaning. The world said he left her. They couldn't imagine that she had been leaving him long before he ever walked away. He didn't speak, he couldn't. Everything he wanted to say was trapped in his chest, pushing against ribs and throat and lungs, begging to break out. When it was over, everyone else left. Alexander stayed. The cemetery slowly emptied. The wind settled. The city noise faded. And there he was, just a man kneeling in front of a grave, his suit damp with early morning dew, his heart hollowed out. He whispered something, so soft even the wind didn't hear it. Then he stood, walked to his car, and drove without direction. He didn't call Maya. Not that day. Not that week. Not that month. She didn't call him either. She understood something the world never teaches loudly. Grief is not something you comfort. It is something you give space to, so she let him disappear. She let him heal in silence. But healing did not come. Alexander returned to work, but something fundamental in him had changed. The sharpness that made him formidable dulled. The confidence that made him admired faded. The walls he kept around his heart crumbled. He wasn't broken in a dramatic way, he was just quiet now. Less flame, more ash. Meetings felt heavy. Boardrooms echoed. Success felt meaningless. Every accomplishment tasted like the absence of something. He passed the rooftop restaurant once. The one where he waited alone that night. He stopped, went inside, sat at the same table, two chairs. But only one ever needed. He didn't cry, he simply stared at the seat across from him, the seat where love once lived, and let the silence speak. Months later, Maya finally approached him. Not as a lover. Not as a replacement. Just as someone who still cared. She stood in the doorway of his office, smaller than the room, quieter than the air. You haven't eaten today, she whispered. He looked up. His eyes were tired, the kind of tired that comes from something life-sized breaking inside you. Maya walked to him slowly, gently, the way one approaches a wounded animal. She placed a meal on his desk. Turned to leave. But he caught her hand. Not in passion. Not in need. Just an acknowledgement. Thank you, he said softly. She nodded, her eyes warm, sad, understanding. She didn't ask him to love her. She didn't ask him to move on. She didn't ask him to forget. She simply stayed. Quiet, gentle, present. And that was enough. Not to fix him, but to keep him from falling apart completely. Alexander never Remarried, he never loved the way he loved Elena, he never laughed the way he laughed with Maya, he simply learned to live, slowly, carefully, respectfully. Some people don't get one great love, had two, he lost them both. Point 1 to illness. Point 1 to grief. Some endings aren't about who ends up together. Some endings are about who we become after love changes us. And Alexander Reed, billionaire leader, visionary, lived the rest of his life with a heart that had once held something incredible, something rare, something fragile, something that didn't last, but mattered deeply.